Bermuda Triangle is known for several mysterious maritime and aviation disasters, as more than 50 ships and 20 airplanes have disappeared in this unexplained nautical region in the last century. And if you dig down into each one of the mysterious disappearances, you will find out each one has a story. A very concerning story without an ending. This has led to a lot of conspiracy theories about the numerous disappearances in the area, an area now known as the Devil's Triangle because of all its unsettling happenings. It is an area of the Atlantic Ocean between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda, which is widely known for its stories of ships and airplanes that seem to have disappeared without a trace. Conspiracy theories on their disappearance include everything from magnetic forces, to aliens, to methane bubbles, even to the lost city of Atlantis. But we will get a better understanding of the Bermuda cause and effect in this video, and I have to honestly warn you that the Bermuda Triangle is very much disturbing than you think. In the year 1950, an article appeared in many American newspapers telling the tale of mysterious vanishings between Florida's coast and the island of Bermuda. Over the past 5 years, 5 separate incidents were recounted. 1 boat, 9 planes, and about 135 people disappeared without a single trace. This marked the first time this part of the ocean was thought to have a strange tendency for ships and planes to vanish. But since the author of the article couldn't explain why these strange events were happening, another mystery was born, sparking endless speculations and wonders. But let me guide you through some timelines of disasters associated with the Bermuda Triangle. Reports date back to 1945 when 5 American torpedo bombers that went on a routine overwater navigational training flight disappeared. The flight leader in charge of the unit was a U.S. Navy lieutenant named Charles Carroll Taylor. They had completed the first leg of the training and were making a turn to proceed toward the second leg of the exercise when things took a turn for the worse. In a radio message that was intercepted from one of the 5 aircraft, a crewman asked one of the student pilots for a compass reading, and the pilot replied, "I don't know where we are. We must have gotten lost after that last turn." Moments later, air traffic control lost all communication with all of the aircraft, and all 14 airmen involved in the training flight were never seen or heard from again. A plane was sent to search for them, but it also disappeared without a trace. But one of the things that raised suspicion about the disappearance of the 5 aircraft was that the flight leader had amassed some 2,500 flying hours, in addition to his completion of a combat tour in the Pacific Theater during World War II. Also, the weather in the area designated for the training flight appeared fairly standard, except for a few scattered showers and wind speeds, which were deemed normal for an exercise of this nature. The conditions seem right, and at the same time also not consistent with the way the aircraft vanished, which raises more questions as to what could have caused the tragic disappearance of the aircrafts and its crew. But these 14 men wouldn't be the only ones to vanish into thin air in the Bermuda region, as another big incident also happened on the 20th of June 2005, when the first Piper PA airplane disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle with exactly 3 people on board who vanished. The most recent tragedy happened in 2015 when the cargo ship El Faro vanished in this region. El Faro, a U.S. vessel traveling from Florida to Puerto Rico, disappeared from radar on October 1st, 2015. The ship earlier reported to have lost its propulsion, taking in water, and was tilting 15 degrees to its side. Hours later, the ship disappeared off the radar. All efforts to establish communication with the vessel failed, and after weeks of intense search and rescue operation, the Coast Guard eventually spotted 2 large debris fields containing items identified to be from El Faro, and was found wrecked on the ocean floor on October 31st. But in case you are wondering what could have been the cause of all these disasters, let's dig down into a particular event from the account of a survivor in the Bermuda region. My goal is to reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year, so before I continue, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Bruce Jernan was piloting a single-engine Beechcraft Bonanza on December 4th, 1970. On board were his father and his business partner. They departed from Andros Island in the Bahamas, aiming for the northwest towards Florida. This flight was nothing out of the ordinary for Bruce. He had made this journey countless times. Typically, the flight took about an hour and a half, always smooth, without any issues or unusual occurrences. Shortly after takeoff, Bruce began to climb. As he reached about 1,000 feet, he noticed a small cloud ahead of them. Initially, it seemed like any other cloud, but it started to grow larger and larger as they approached it. This wasn't merely a trick of perspective. The cloud was expanding in size. With no way to avoid it, Bruce flew through the cloud, and they emerged on the other side without incident. However, this was just the beginning. At an altitude of 11,500 feet, they encountered another cloud. This one was massive, far larger than the first. Again, Bruce had no option but to fly through it. As they entered the cloud, it grew dark, like night, even though there was no storm or rain. This was unsettling. But Bruce kept his composure and continued to pilot the aircraft through the cloud. Inside the cloud, Bruce noticed something extraordinary. Bright white flashes of light appeared and disappeared quickly, lighting up the entire space around them. It was unlike any lightning he had ever seen. These flashes were more intense and frequent, giving the impression of being inside an electric fog. Bruce and his passengers felt a sense of unease but pressed on, hoping to emerge from the cloud soon. After about 30 minutes of flying through this strange cloud, Bruce realized they were still inside it. The cloud seemed to have formed a tunnel around them, cylindrical and about a mile wide. The end of the tunnel was nowhere in sight, and Bruce began to worry that they might be trapped. As they flew through this tunnel, things took a turn for the worse. The walls of the cloud began to narrow, closing in on the plane. To add to the tension, the plane's navigational instruments started to malfunction. The compass spun counterclockwise uncontrollably, and the electronic instruments went haywire. It felt as if the plane was being controlled by an external force, or as if it was moving through some kind of unseen current. Bruce struggled to maintain control, but his efforts seemed futile. Despite the chaos, Bruce was determined to get them out of this predicament. The walls of the cloud tunnel continued to close in, forming a vortex around the plane. Time was running out, and Bruce knew he had to act quickly. The next 20 seconds were the most intense of his life. He pushed forward, keeping the plane steady, and finally, they burst out of the cloud tunnel. Emerging from the tunnel, Bruce felt weightless for a moment. The plane was now in a grayish haze, and the tension began to ease. The men on board let out a collective sigh of relief. Bruce immediately grabbed the radio and contacted ground control, anxious to determine their location. To his surprise, the dispatcher couldn't find the plane on the radar. It was as if the plane had become invisible. After a moment, the dispatcher informed Bruce that his plane was already in Miami airspace. This was shocking because the trip that usually took around 90 minutes had taken only 47 minutes this time. The distance they covered was about 250 miles, and the Beechcraft Bonanza could only cruise at about 180 miles per hour. This discrepancy was baffling. Bruce couldn't believe it. The math didn't add up. At the Bonanza's cruising speed, it was physically impossible for them to have traveled that distance in such a short time. Yet, when the clouds parted, Bruce saw the Miami coastline below them. They had indeed reached their destination far ahead of schedule. Upon landing, Bruce immediately checked the remaining fuel and his watch. The plane hadn't used as much fuel as it should have for a normal flight of that distance. This further confirmed that something extraordinary had happened. Bruce's account added to the lore of the Bermuda Triangle, an area infamous for mysterious disappearances and unexplained phenomena. His experience was one of the few with a first-hand witness who survived to tell the tale. It brought renewed attention to the region and its potential hazards. From a scientific standpoint, several theories were proposed to explain Bruce's experience. One possibility was a rare form of a lenticular cloud, which can create optical illusions and affect navigational instruments. Bruce's description of an electric fog and malfunctioning instruments suggests a possible electromagnetic event. The Bermuda Triangle is known for its magnetic anomalies, which can interfere with navigation equipment. One theory is that Bruce's plane flew through an area with an intense magnetic field, causing the compass to spin and electronic instruments to fail. Electromagnetic interference can occur naturally, such as from solar flares or geomagnetic storms. These events can disrupt communications and navigation systems. However, these occurrences are typically well documented by space weather agencies, and there was no record of significant solar activity on December 4th, 1970 that could explain Bruce's experience. And as much I don't want to say this, I still have to tell you that this leaves the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle partially unsolved.